What are ArrayLists? They're a generic class that extends an abstract list class. Essentially, it expands the functionality of what arrays are capable of. Essentially, it's a class where the private data is actually an array, but you only have access to it through its public methods like any other normal classes. Here's a visual representation of an integer array list. Notice how I said integer and not int. That is because ArrayLists are a generic class and must use the wrapper class for integers. Calling the add method on this ArrayList places the 6 at the end of the list. Notice how the global variable size gets incremented. Then removing 3 gets rid of the third index, which in this case happens to be the same 6 that we just added, and the size decrements. The size method checks the class for the global variable size, which in this case is 3. This size variable gets updated as the array list gets bigger and smaller. And finally, get2 returns the value inside of the index 2, which in this case is -12. So let's take a look behind the scenes of an array list. Inside the ArrayList class, we store a normal array, but this array isn't publicly accessible. The only way we can interact with it is if we use the class methods. The array is initialized to some capacity, in this case it is 5. Essentially, that is the max value that this array can hold. And then finally, our size variable is initialized to 0, because even though the array here has a size of 5, our array list, or what the user sees, should appear to be empty. Let's add 4 to the array list. This green part is going to keep track of the data that is visible to the user through the use of methods. Notice how the rest of the array is not visible to the user. The array list only shows the data that the user is meant to interact with. The size then increases by 1. Then we add -13. The visible part gets larger and the size increases. Same goes with 42. Now let's try calling a get method on the array list for index 4. Well, index 4 is in the range of our array. However, index 4 is not in the visible range for our array list, because 4 is greater than or equal to the size of our array list, which in this case is 3. So, in terms of the array list, index 4 does not exist, and the code will throw an exception. We continue to add -11 and 14. Notice how the array is full and the size of the list is the same as the capacity of our array. Now, if we try to call the method add17, notice what happens since our array is full. Our array list doesn't just magically add an element to the end, but instead it creates a totally new array that is larger than the previous one, and one by one copies down all of the information of the old array, and then finally it adds 17. This is the new array that our array list will be based off of. Now, the global variables that are keeping track of the size and the capacity are both updated. This old array is no longer needed, and Java's trash collector clears it from memory, and our new array becomes the data that represents our array list. And that's all you need to know to understand the basics of array lists. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.